Hello, friends. Welcome back to another episode of I'll Call You Right Back podcast with me, your host. My name is Chad Medved. This is my show. Appreciate you being here as usual. First thing is first, if you enjoy the show, please take a second out of your day to rate and review the podcast. Wherever you're listening to this show right now, whether it be Spotify or Apple Podcasts or Google, there is an option for you to rate and or review the podcast. If you're listening on Apple, you could scroll up and you could leave me a couple of kind words and a 5-star review. And if you're on Spotify, you could scroll up and you will find a option to give me a rating via 5 stars. And any 5 stars reviews are much appreciated in advance. Big help for the small guys like me. But it's been a few weeks since we've had an episode. I apologize for that, but it was much needed. Been 3 weeks. We finished up the last episode with Chris from Bottle Rocket, and we were kind of promoting Bottle Rocket because I was throwing my first live show with John Shalkowski of Odd Pittsburgh, and it was a hell of a night. Had a great time there. Show went off without a hitch, and everyone seemed to love it. Everyone seemed to love it so much that we are currently in the midst of planning the second one. I'll have you know, and I appreciate every single person that showed up to Bottle Rocket on March 31st for a City of Innovation. Maybe a City of Innovation, maybe it's part 1. Who knows what's going to happen with the second show, but much appreciated. But we got a big one this week. This is a big moment for me as a podcaster, as an interviewer, and as a Pittsburgher in general. This week, I sit down with a Pittsburgh icon, as he says it in his own words. But I feel like, growing up, anything you put on TV, anytime I would watch any shows, whether it be, Tool Time, The Simpsons, whatever, anything you watch, in the commercial breaks, you are sure to have heard my guest this week. This week, I sit down with attorney Edgar Snyder, the attorney Edgar Snyder that you see on all the ads that have been sprinkled through our entire existence growing up. Like I said, he was on every channel all the time. Anytime there was a commercial on, you knew the tagline, there's no fee unless we get money for you. And I was able to reach out to Edgar Snyder, and I asked him, would you like to come on the show and tell me about your legacy as a lawyer and a marketeer and just a Pittsburgher in general? And he, much to my surprise, was like, yeah, let's do it. So I had Edgar Snyder come over to my studio in my basement, and we sat down and we had a hell of a conversation. Obviously, a man who needs no introduction. He has a wild story. He's been practicing law since the late 60s. He's been around. I'm 32 years old, okay? Edgar is 81. My parents are 65. My point being that every single person, regardless of the age, knows of Edgar Snyder. He's just a brand that is been able to travel through the city and kind of make a name for himself through his marketing and his innovation with marketing. And it's pretty incredible because, like I said, I'm 32. I've never needed a personal injury lawyer, but I know who Edgar Snyder is, and I know his tagline. And if I am 32 and I know it by heart and I'll probably never forget it, he did a damn good job. But we sit down and we talk about his childhood, where he grew up, why he chose law as a career path, and ultimately how he became the business guy that he ended up being. And it's a fascinating conversation, and I couldn't be more thankful for Mr. Snyder to come over and share some of his time with me and share his stories about his life coming up. And I'm proud of the conversation. I'm proud of what I've been able to build with my brand, and it really speaks to me and hopefully speaks to you guys out there that are listening, that I really take it seriously. I really love talking to people and figuring out about their lives. And ultimately, I'm going to reach out to whoever, and I'm going to quit, berating you with my nonsense. And I'm going to let you listen to the episode because I'm pumped about it. So without further ado, episode 239 of I'll Call You Right Back podcast with Mr. Edgar Snyder.
Telephone.
Hello?
Telephone.
I'll call you right back. Call you right back.
Telephone.
I'll Call You Right Back podcast. I'm glad. All right, well, I'm going to turn this off.
Sure.
You need the restroom, anything like that?
Well, if I do, I'll let you know.
Yeah, let me know. I got one right down here.
No worries.
This is not live. There's no video or anything.
No,
so
this is great.
very low pressure. I am going to...
You know what? I have hearing aids in.
Yeah.
Take them out.
Okay, that's
'Cause
fine.
I think that I'll do better. Just remind me not to leave them here.
Absolutely.
Okay, we'll put them right here.
Now, come on up to this microphone, scoot in a little bit, and then we'll get you all settled up. And then feel free, if you want to use your headphones, you can. If you want to use the headphones, it'll be my...
I think, let me try the headphones.
Yeah, let me... and I can
probably
adjust
hear
the volume.
better with the headphones. Let me just...
How's that sound?
Sounds perfect.
You need a volume up or down?
Perfect.
Okay.
It's actually, it's good.
I try to be the most prepared in the room. You know, that's my goal.
It's a good idea.
Like I said, I appreciate you coming over and talking to me about this. It's an honor to have you in the house. You know, I'm sure that you've heard it time and time over again, but you know, you're pretty much a legend around these parts.
We call it an icon.
An icon, yeah, that's a great way to describe it.
The icon is, let's see, that's fine.
Yeah. You can
I just make that a little bit
lower?
Yeah, just a little lower.
Yeah.
And then I won't have to keep my head up. That's great.
There you go. Is that better for you?
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, sounds good. Everything sounds good. Sounds coming in good on your end?
Good.
Perfect. Yeah, but an icon, that's a great way to describe it. How long you been in this business?
Been a lawyer for maybe 57 years.
57 years. That's amazing.
Yeah, I've been a lawyer since 1966.
Late 60s, you
66, I became a lawyer.
graduated law school?
Graduated law school in 66 and then started to practice law.
That's incredible.
Let me just turn this.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I obviously, you know, lawyer, very well known for that, but I'd like to rewind a little bit and kind of find out a little bit about, you know, what you were like growing up, how you kind of got into this field, if that's all right.
You go anywhere you want to go.
I love that. So you were born in Connellsville.
Yes.
And Fayette County. Mm-hmm. Now, growing up, what was life like for you growing up?
Well, I moved to Pittsburgh when I was 6 years old. So I really grew up in Pittsburgh, in the Squirrel Hill section of Pittsburgh.
Okay.
But I was excuse me.
Yeah.
I was born, and I spent the first 6 years with my family, two older siblings, and in Connellsville.
Yeah. And growing up, like, what were you into?
Well, I'm gonna date everything, Chad. Up to 6, I was into toys.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I was 6 years old, and I really started school when I went to when we moved to Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
So I think that the earlier part of my life, up until I was 6 years old, I was just a little kid growing up in a coal community. Connellsville was coal. My father had. We called it a men's clothing store. They sold overalls to coal miners.
Oh, wow!
And so that was the atmosphere upon which I came into this world.
Yeah.
Okay. And as I say, my father had a store there. My mother worked in the store, and I have a sister who's 11 years older than I am, and I have a brother who is a little bit short. A couple months, but he's about eight years older. So I was really the baby of the family.
Yeah.
And that's how it all started for me.
That's pretty incredible. Your dad did that for a while?
My dad was in the business. He started the business in 1929. 3 months. He and my mother were married. They started this business 3 months before the Depression. Wow. And lost everything for a couple of years. This is what I've heard.
Yeah.
For a couple of years, he worked on the barter. It worked on barter. That's how they survived. My father always used to say to me, and as I was growing up, he used to say to me, just remember, Edgar, as you grow up, for every dollar you make, you better save a dime, because you never know what's going to happen in your lifetime. And he said, he was a young man at the time. I guess, he would have been about 31, 32 years old. And he said, I lost everything. I mean, your mother and I lost everything. We had absolutely nothing. My sister was born in 1930. Brother was born in 1933. So they really grew up in a home during the Depression, where it was going full blast. I was born in 41. By that time already the Depression was over, but we were embroiled. I was born in September of 1941. World War II started on December 7th. I was 3 months old when World War II started. So that, I grew up in a home where they lived the Depression, and then we were into World War II. And by the time World War II was winding down, we moved shortly after that to Pittsburgh, and that's basically where I've spent my whole life. But my roots are very important to me, and a lot of my family and all of that good stuff really takes place back in the days in Fayette County. And I, for many, many years, we had family that lived there.
Yeah.
And I would go back up until the time I probably graduated high school. So I didn't live there any longer, but I spent time there and went there. And every once in a while when I'm in that area, I still stop and show people where
where you grew up.
Yeah, where I grew up.
That's great. That's fantastic. Now, coming up, you said you had two older siblings.
Right.
As a kid, like, were you playing sports? Like, what kind of things like that were you into, like, coming up through school?
Well, two different lives. Having a sister that's 11 years older and a brother that's 8 years older. By the time I was getting of age, let's just say when I was 10 years old, my brother was graduating high school already, and going to college, and my sister already was finishing college and going on. So I grew up in a home. My parents always said to me, "You're really an only child, Edgar."
Yeah, that's what it felt like. My brother's 6 years older than me,
and that's what it felt like to me. So at the time when I grew up and living in Squirrel Hill and starting school at that time in the public school system. It was really, it was a different life for me. I got to know my siblings, my brother and sister, better as I got older.
Yeah, that's what it seemed to be for me. It's like whenever I was younger, my brother was a senior in high school. Whenever I was in, sixth grade. So, your lives are a little bit different. But as he goes to college and I get older, it was easier for me to relate as I became, a teen. And
yeah, it's absolutely right. But when I was graduating high school, my brother was graduating medical school. So
he was a doctor.
Yeah, he's a physician. He's a retired physician, but he was a urologist. And my sister had a master's degree, and she went on to work at Westinghouse at that time. So it's very interesting. But the thing that's so interesting is that I grew up basically in a house. It's an immigrant's house. My mother was born in the city of Pittsburgh. My father was born in Russia.
Oh,
He came over when he was 11 years old. They escaped. There were what they call pogroms back at that time in Russia. That was time when they were killing Jews in the beginning of the 20th century.
Yeah.
And he fled. His parents fled. And he came over when he was 11 years old to Montreal. And then they ended up in Ohio. And then they ended up in Pennsylvania. But I grew up in a home first generation. And I had the typical immigrant experience growing up. That's where, and you get into the Depression, and then you get into all the things that really happened. But it's kind of like what goes on in any other home where you have where you're the first generation on my father's side.
Yeah, that's very interesting. What ended up bringing him to Pittsburgh? Why did he end up in Pittsburgh?
So the story goes, he was living in Ohio. He was a young man in his 20s, and he had an opportunity to go to Connersville in Fayette County. He had a brother who lived in Uniontown, which is also part of Fayette County.
Yeah.
Uniontown, growing up in Connersville, Uniontown was the big city. So he had a chance to get there, and I think that's where he got into business and ultimately opened up a store. And and I think that's he was living in Connersville, and then somebody introduced him in Connersville. I think it was a member of my mother's sister was living there, and introduced him to my mother in the late 20s. And they ultimately, as I said, got married in 1929 and raised their family in Connersville. And then we moved to Pittsburgh in 1947.
That's incredible. Absolutely incredible. Now, what were your ideas about what you wanted to be growing up? Like, did you always want to get into law? Is that something? Often the people that I interview, I'd say 98% of them are not. They didn't want to do that as a kid growing up. What they're doing now.
When you grow up in a home where your father has a 5th grade education, a lot of immigrants, the experience is, I want my kids to have the education that I never had. And that is very typical in any immigrant experience you talk to during that period of time when a parent doesn't have an education. It was really funny because my mother had a college degree, and that was very unusual in the 20s for women to go to college. But the experience of my father, and he preached education, education, education. And I grew up in a home where from the youngest age, I remember my father saying, "You're going to be a doctor or a lawyer."
Those are the two routes.
Those are the two routes. I mean, you're going to be a doctor or a lawyer, and I didn't pay any attention to it because I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. But that was the emphasis when I grew up in my home. You want to be a doctor or a lawyer? Well, my brother became a doctor, and they were very proud. The experience of many, many families is that, especially in Jewish families, your goal is, oh my God, I have a son who's a doctor. What could be better than having a son who's a doctor? And I thought that was great. I wanted my parents to be proud of me too, and so I think I was a terrible high school student. So but back in those days they didn't have college boards. I didn't have to take college boards. So as long as you could pay, I don't like to tell that story all the time. I like to make myself out to be smarter than I am. Really not. But really at that particular time. In terms of what I wanted to be and what I wanted to do, I just, my brother's a doctor. I want him to be proud. So I went to Penn State and I took Chemistry 101 and I got a D as in the name David. And that determined that I was no longer had any options to be a doctor because if you couldn't get past with a good grade in chemistry, and that's all it was.
That's the least of your worries.
That's the least of my worries. Okay, so that's out of the way now. I don't have to worry about being a doctor now. Okay, so my dad says, "Well, I guess you're going to be a lawyer," and I said, "Well, if you say so." I mean, I hadn't really formed into it. But at Penn State, when I went to Penn State University, I got into college debating. And I ultimately ended up being the captain of the Penn State debate team at that time. And the one talent that I had, and it really was, it was pretty singular because, as I said, I was mediocre as a high school student, and that was giving myself a lot of grace with that word mediocre.
Yeah.
But I found that I was a good speaker. I could talk. My mother always had an expression, Edgar could talk his way out of a paper bag. So that was the expression in my house. And
where do you think that comes from? Your ability to be well versed.
It's not so much well versed; it's well spoken.
Well spoken, yeah.
Well versed sounds like you have some intelligence, and I'm never sure about that. But I could talk very well on things that I know very little about because that's In Pittsburgh, we call it BSing, but it's true. I mean, I'm not exaggerating, and it was a knack. It was a knack, and I could always do that, and that helped me a lot at Penn State, because once I went to Penn State and I found that I was a good debater, it kind of opened up the doors for me at Penn State, and I went from being a poor to mediocre student in high school, and it didn't start off well with my D in chemistry, but got into debating and found that I was good at it, and it kind of probably had the experience that a lot of other people did. It built up my confidence that I was, maybe I am good at something.
Yeah, you found something interesting.
I found something that I was good at, and during that period of time, I had the opportunity, like anybody else did, on college debate teams to debate in different schools all over the country, or at least all over the Midwest and the Eastern United States. And I wasn't stellar, but I was good.
Well, what kind of things were you debating? Like, what does a college debate team do?
Debate teams get a subject, and it's a universal subject. It could be I can't even remember to tell you what they were.
But is it like it's like world issues, political type things?
Take one issue that would be controversial at the time. Okay.
Yeah.
And that is when I say universal, everybody in the United States debates that. You research it.
Oh, okay.
And you debate it, and then you debate. You're either pro or con, okay? And you learn how to do both. You're either for something or against.
Yeah.
And in debating, you have to be able to do it both sides.
Yeah.
Which was very good preparation for later in life, because when you learn how to debate and you learn how to argue both sides of an argument, your brain can't become one-sided. But everybody, and I think it's a very good question, because people don't understand. They say debating, well, what did you debate? For the most part, you're debating the same subject, because then everybody's on a level playing field. You can research it, you can prepare yourself, and there was an emphasis on preparation and reading and studying up on a subject that was ever the subject. And it changed every year, so that during that period of time, we would all debate the same subject. I was pretty good at that, but there was one part of debating. That had to do with extemporaneous speaking. Extemporaneous is you're talking to me now. I don't have any notes. You're asking me questions, and I'm giving you answers. Well, the things we're talking about are pretty easy for me to answer. It's my life.
Yeah.
Okay. But at that time, they would have subjects, but it wouldn't be a prepared subject, a universal subject.
Okay, I get what you're saying.
And I found that I was very good at somebody asking me a question and having 3 minutes to think about what I was going to be able to argue or talk about, giving me a subject. It wasn't arguing. It was speak about something, and then you would be
formulating a cohesive thought.
Formulating a cohesive thought and being able to discuss something. It turns out that was excellent training for what I was going to do later in life as a lawyer. But I didn't know it at the time. I mean, it wasn't. I guess you asked, the original question was, when did I know I was going to be a lawyer? Well, it's part joke, part not. When I didn't do well in chemistry. But I did decide by the time I was graduating college that I was going to apply to law school. And I did, and I went to the University of Pittsburgh Law School, where I continued being a very mediocre student at best. Studies was, but I was good. I was good at what they call moot court. I was good again at arguing things, like you would be doing in a courtroom. It was preparation for being a lawyer. So everything pointed in the direction of. Edgar, you got one talent. You ought to take it up, because what else are you going to do?
Well, so whenever you have this mindset to go to law school, what type of did you have an idea what type of law you wanted to practice?
Zero. When you go to law school, even today, Chad, it's the same thing. It's a general education.
Yeah.
Okay, and you learn every different subject, and then after law school's 3 years, and then as you get towards your second and third year, you can take electives. And at that particular time, you might develop an interest in one particular part of the practice and be able to take courses. If you're interested in business, you might take tax law, you might take business, all kinds of different courses. It just depends on what you're in. I knew that when I was in law school, once again, I was good at, it wasn't debating, it was moot court. And so I was good at that. And I said, well, I think I really want to be a trial lawyer, because that's what they do. They argue in court. And
just about broad subjects, like multiple of subjects, right? Like, explain a little bit what moot court means.
Moot court is in law school. They have competitions.
Yeah.
They give you a subject. In debating, you would have a universal subject in college. In law school, they give you the facts of a case, and it might be a criminal case. Somebody committed a murder. Your job is to be the prosecutor. And here they give you, everybody gets a set of facts, and then you are either the prosecutor or you are the lawyer for the defendant.
Yeah.
And they have a person who plays like a judge, and you have, it's kind of play acting, but you have a subject, and you go against the other side.
Yeah, so it's interchangeable. Sometimes you'll be a prosecutor, sometimes you'll be a defendant.
Exactly. They tell you what you want to be, but it's a competition. And then you go against other law schools. And at that time, there was one other law school in Pittsburgh, which was Duquesne Law School, and things like that. But mostly it was at the time at Pitt Law School. It was within the law school you debated, and you tried these hypothetical cases to give you a feel of what it was like to become a lawyer and try cases. And they used to have competitions at that particular time. I don't have any idea whether they still do or not. They probably do. But once again, I was very good at that. So I had a knack. So at least I had an impression in my mind when I got out that I'd like to do something like that, although it doesn't always work that way. But in my mind, and it turned out that that's exactly where I ended up. But that isn't what happened when I graduated law school. But that's not the path I directly started on.
Yeah. But now in law school, like, did you feel that whenever you were in school, you had a knack for this, and like that you were gravitating towards it, or was it almost like a fake it till you make it type of situation, or
no, it wasn't fake it till you make it. I was only good at one thing.
Yeah.
So,
but you felt confident in that thing.
I felt confident in that thing, and that's the direction I headed in, because other than that, what was I in my mind? What was I going to do? Now, once you're out of law school, you could basically do anything you wanted to. All you had to do is get a job in an area, and somebody had to hire you to start doing that. But, that's what I thought I wanted to do, and it turned out that ultimately that was the job that I was able to get. After I graduated law school, I had married a girl who lived in Duquesne, Pennsylvania, which at the time was a steel town. Duquesne Works, U.S. Steel, Mon Valley. And I had a daytime job working for a law firm, but I wanted to have my own business. There was something entrepreneurial about me, even way back in 1966 when I graduated law school.
So when you graduated, you had the idea that eventually you wanted to have your own law firm instead of.
I didn't think about having my own law firm. I wanted to have my own business, because the law firm where I was working was paying me so little money that I knew that if I didn't get some business on my own, I was already married at the time, and I said, I really have to. I have to try to do this. So at the time, I opened up in a little insurance company office on Grant Street in Duquesne, Pennsylvania, outside of the steel mill. And I used to go to my office, and it really was not a law office. It was an insurance company place where they sold insurance, but I hung out a shingle in the front. And when the mill would let out, I would turn the lights on. And I'd sit in the front door. I mean, this is all true, because in later life, people used to joke. They still joke with me that I remember you when you were sitting in a chair in front of your office, hoping that people would talk to you or hire you. But
what age are you at this?
I was 25. I just graduated law school.
Okay.
And this is what I did. It turned out to be probably the most important decision that as I look back, and when I look back over my life, it actually was a very, very important decision to do this. But you don't do anything. Very rarely do you do anything in your life that at the time when you're doing it, that you realize the emphasis and the importance of it, what it's going to be as you get older. At the time, I did it because it wasn't that in fact, I'm not sure that they had the word entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Okay, back in those days. Okay, but I knew that I needed to have some of my own business to make more money, and I wanted to. I'm a real people person, and therefore I wanted to deal with people myself, and that worked out to be actually it worked out to be one of the best decisions as I look back on my whole life that I ever made because I was in Duquesne, Pennsylvania. I'd grown up in Squirrel Hill, and I don't want to say that it was a privileged life, but people, as public schools go, that was a very well-to-do place, and we were from a middle-class family. And I went to Duquesne, and I really never knew people who worked in the steel mill. I really had no association because that's not where my environment was growing up and going to high school. You kind of associate with the people that live in your neighborhood.
Yeah.
And that wasn't my neighborhood. When I went to Duquesne, I got a tremendous education. I learned something that I never could have learned at home. I learned how to drink Boilermakers. Now, that sounds funny, but 15 pounds later, I was looking fat but happy.
Yeah.
But it's true. I learned how to take a shot in the beer. I mean, that's what you do in Duquesne. And I ended up, as years went by, I knew all the firemen, knew all the policemen. I became the lawyer for the fire department. I became the lawyer for the police department. I became the lawyer next door for Duquesne Works United States Steel Credit Union. All of these things were in a place where I wasn't familiar, and I learned how to deal with all kinds of people that up until that time in my life, I just hadn't had the opportunity. That was good for me because it turned out later that I got a job as a public defender in Allegheny County. And at the time, that's when the whole public defender system, that's up until the early 60s, when somebody was charged with a crime, they didn't have a right to have a lawyer. It's hard for people to understand that now.
Is that true?
Oh, it is true. It's actually a very famous case called Gideon versus Wainwright. Gave people that were poor, who couldn't afford a lawyer, they appointed a public defender. They had a public defender system set up. Today, they have about 75, 80 lawyers. At the time when we started, it was 4 lawyers doing all the work for indigent people that are charged with crimes in Allegheny County. And
wow,
this was a great opportunity. But it was because I was in Duquesne, Pennsylvania, that I became friendly from drinking all this beer and all these shots. No, this is a true story. I'm not exaggerating. At that time, I met somebody who was a very important part at that time in my life, his name was Leonard Stacy. And people that are old like me remember Leonard Stacy. He was a county commissioner, but that's when the whole public defender system started. And the county commissioner had the right to appoint people to work in that office, which was representing people who were charged with crimes. What it did for me was I represented them, got me into a courtroom, and for the next 2 years, I got that job, I think in 1968. So I graduated law school in 66. During that period of time, I worked in Duquesne, met these people, got appointed, and for the next 2 years, I was in court every single day.
Yeah, just getting your reps.
Just getting my reps. And that was very important to me because that changed the course of my life. I learned how to become a trial lawyer. So all of the skills that I talked about earlier in the podcast, I was able to develop and use and learn how to try cases. And at that time, learn how to try criminal cases. I had not yet got into what I ultimately was, which was, trying cases and having accidents, lawyers.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the genesis of how this whole thing started.
That's fascinating. It's fascinating to think that there was a time period where people weren't provided a public defender if they couldn't afford one. It's pretty crazy.
You had no way to have a lawyer. There wasn't anything provided, and you didn't have any money. Sometimes people ended up having to represent themselves or things of this nature. And it also gave you not just the right to have a lawyer, but a lawyer who was trained to represent you. Okay, I'm actually not even sure. People have said to me, "Well, what did people do back in the before this?"
It's a great question.
Pardon my language. They got screwed.
Yeah,
and screwed meaning they didn't have the advantage of having somebody that was trained, and a lot of people ended up poor people. I mean, this was people who had money were able to afford lawyers.
Yeah,
that decision changed the way in which this country was molded after that very important Supreme Court decision.
Wow.
I benefited from that because that's when the public defender system started right back in, I think, 64, 65. I graduated law school in 66. I got a job in 68. And because we were so busy representing people that they're just, I probably tried 5, 6, 7 murder cases where you never would be trying those kind of cases. How would you even get those and prepare for it?
Yeah.
But I was assigned the cases. I got paid as a public defender, not a lot of money, but great training, and had the opportunity to represent all these people, and actually won a lot of those cases. And it gave me a lot of confidence that I was really good at this, that I could do this.
Do you have a case like offhand that was like one of the first ones that was like a pretty, high stakes that sticks with you? That
the most famous case recently, I happened to read something that said Edgar Snyder represented Stanley Haas, which was the case of the century. In 1969, there was a man named Stanley Haas who lived out in Lower Burrell, that area of Westmoreland County.
Yeah.
And he shot a police officer in Verona, and then he stole a car, kidnapped a mother and daughter, and a police chase took place that they ultimately caught him in Waterloo, Iowa. But this was a vicious crime.
Yeah.
And it was vicious because ultimately he killed the mother and the daughter as well as the police officer, never told anybody where he buried them. And they brought him back to town, and he was kind of described. I didn't call him that, but he was described as kind of an animal. I mean, and his reputation for being strong and being a criminal and the whole thing. And I was assigned the case as a public defender and
defending
Stanley Haas at that time. And I was, pretty frightened to be alone with him because that's what you have to do. I had to go to the jail and meet him. And I didn't know whether he wanted to be a lawyer or not. I always remember, it's funny today. It's a funny story today, but it's true. They said to me, we'll send Haas in so you can talk to him in a private room, and we'll be outside. I said, oh, no.
Are you late 20s, early 30s?
28.
And I'm sorry to cut you off, but yeah. I'm curious, like at your mindset of this, like obviously you're young in your career, and you're trying to get any sort of meaningful experience you could get. Right. What is your mindset about like defending someone who has these like vicious accusations?
By that time, I had already tried cases and for many murders, and I believed it then, I believe it now. I believe everybody has a right to a trial, and as long as you don't put anybody on and perjure yourself, that they're not telling the truth, you don't have to put anybody on the stand. I don't care whether they're guilty or not. In my mind, nobody says to their lawyer, I'm guilty, but get me off. It doesn't work that way. But I believe the people have a right to have representation, and therefore I never had a problem. I still don't today. I have no problem. People today, without going into specifics, people today say, "Oh, that person's so good." Why does a lawyer represent? Well, a lawyer represents them because everybody has a right to have a lawyer. And if you don't have money, you get appointed a lawyer. And if you do have money, you can you can hire a lawyer. And at that time, I believed in this. I believed in the system then. I'd already had experience trying serious crimes.
Yeah.
And this was an opportunity for me, and it turned out to be an incredible opportunity. The case was so big that every news station carried it, every television station carried it.
This is a national case.
It was a local case
Okay.
in Pittsburgh, but it was big in Pittsburgh. It was a number one story in the city of Pittsburgh.
Okay.
The year that it happened, because we didn't have O.J. Simpson and all those things following people back in that. This was 30 some years before those kind of cases took place. But everybody wanted to know what happened to his mother, what happened to his daughter.
Absolutely.
Police officer was shot. So they followed, and it was weeks before they caught him out there. I mean, he was on the lam for quite a long time, and then it was publicized what type of a person he was. So I had to defend this person, and I just remember sitting in the room saying, I don't want to be in the room with him. Maybe he doesn't want to talk to me either. By the time they get in to help me, they'll strangle me.
Yeah.
I mean, too young in my career to get killed.
Yeah.
But it turned out that he wasn't that way with me. But it was a high publicity, high stakes case. I worried about it at that time because they were seeking the death penalty. And I said, well, 28 years old, handling this case.
How old was he at that time?
Around the same age, maybe.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if he was an older person.
No. I think he, I'm going to say in his 20s or 30s.
Yeah.
I just don't remember how old he was, but he wasn't old. And so I was assigned to represent him. I represented him. It was an amazing trial. Lasted for maybe a week, 10 days. He was found guilty and sentenced to death. And I was his lawyer, and I said, "Oh, this is so great. This is going to be so great for me as a lawyer. Everybody wants to have somebody that can go to the electric chair." I'm joking with you.
No, I get it. Yeah.
But I mean, this was my mindset. When it was over, when that part was over. An anecdote. During this period of time, we had the trial. The trial was in March of 1970. The time for the death sentence was March 10th, 1970. Say to me, Chad, Edgar, why do you remember? How could you remember back on the date that it was? Because the day that he got the electric chair, my daughter, Jennifer, was born in the hospital. So her birthday is March 10th, 1970. Stanley Haas was sentenced to the electric chair. Bill Burns, who was a very famous newscaster in Pittsburgh at that time on KDKA, he covered the trial. And I remember Bill Burns saying he had kind of an Irish brogue saying, history is made today. The attorney, Edgar Snyder's client, is going to be fried in the electric chair. And isn't that ironic? His own child was born today. You got kind of a life and death situation, and I'm going, oh my God.
Yeah.
But it was all of that publicity, handling the case, high profile, doing all that. Where could you get that kind of experience when you're 28 years old?
Yeah, you get thrown to the wolves, so to speak.
And ultimately, I handled the case for I wasn't a public defender anymore, but I asked to do it, and I handled the case, and I got it reversed in the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. Not his conviction, but the death sentence, because it was illegal the way they handled it, which is not for another time.
Yeah,
but I got it reversed, so I had incredible experience surrounding probably one of the highest profile cases ever tried in Allegheny County.
Wow.
And it was pretty good at 28 years old, other than the verdict.
Yeah.
And it didn't bother me because inside I knew it wasn't even a question of guilt. I mean, he shot the police. I mean, he did it. I mean, he was running all over. The issue, I handled the case. The object was to try and save him from going to the electric chair. I did, but it probably took a couple of years down the road. Great experience, though. And then, so at that time, Chad, I became a criminal lawyer. I still had this office in Duquesne, and I had my own office. And then I started to get with some other people who were lawyers, and I probably in 1970 or 71, when I stopped being a public defender with some friends, we formed our own law firm at that time. And but I kept this office in Duquesne because that now was where I was getting business from.
Yeah.
And I used that. And for the next, for about 17 years, I was a criminal trial lawyer. That's primarily what I did. I always handled other kinds of work, but I was a criminal trial lawyer until we get into 1982, and that was about a year or two after advertising became popular. So that started a whole new chapter of my life. But if you looked at my life in terms of profession, what I did and what took place up until then, I was a criminal lawyer. I probably handled more serious felony cases, including homicide, privately now, not for the public defender's office.
Yeah. Meaning people would reach out to you and hire you.
They'd reach out and hire me, and they would pay me to represent them. And that's what I did. I mean, that was my life during the 70s here in Pittsburgh. And I liked it. I was good at it. And that's where I thought my career would go until the United States Supreme Court said you're allowed to advertise, and then my life changed.
Now, before then, you said this was in the early 80s, 82, that you were allowed to advertise?
You were allowed to advertise. In the Supreme Court changed the rules on legal up until 1979. If you put an ad in, today, every law firm in America advertises. Before 1979, nobody could put an ad in. Nobody could do anything that was advertising. It was unethical, and you'd be disbarred as a lawyer. So there was no advertising.
How did people find out about you?
Eureka! They didn't.
So you weren't allowed to have anything in newspapers or anything. It was basically word of mouth?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Why? What's the reasoning of that, though? Just ethics?
Up until that period of time in the legal profession, they felt that it was not, what's the word? They felt that it was not appropriate. It was not professional.
Yeah.
Advertising was for
almost like tacky, kind of like
it's for used car salesmen.
Oh, okay.
By the way, they were my idols.
Yeah.
Okay? Car sales. I'm joking and not joking.
No.
I'm just
I know.
saying. That was, because in the beginning when I started advertising, which is, you'll get into, but they said, he's not a lawyer. He's like a used car salesman. And I used to say, great. I think they're the best salespeople in the world.
It's so interesting to think about that, though, because, obviously, you're known for your marketing throughout the city. I mean, it's absolutely incredible. But, before that, it's hard for me. I'm 32. It's hard for me to conceptualize a world where we're not getting ads shoved down our throat every single second of every single day.
It's hard to imagine that there weren't billboards with lawyers' names on it. And
I just saw one this morning of yours. I just saw yours right on there.
Thank you. It's working. No, but there was nothing. There was no. In fact, billboards didn't come till way later. But until 1979, there was no right for lawyers to advertise, and there was no legal advertising. So you asked the question, which is the right question: how do people get business? They got business by word of mouth. But the reason that advertising became legal.
Yeah, why did that happen?
It's a very narrow reason, and it has nothing to do with saying that lawyers that's what they should be able to do. There was a case called a U.S. Supreme Court case called Bates versus Osteen. It was an office in Phoenix, Arizona, that represented poor people. There was a neighborhood legal office representing people that not were charged just as a crime, but needed to have lawyers, and they couldn't, they didn't know where to go, and they didn't know what to do. And the lawyers put a little, what we call tombstone ad, in a paper, and they were charged with advertising and threatened with disbarment in the state of Arizona for putting this little ad in that said, if you need a lawyer, you can come to see the neighborhood legal. It wasn't even a private thing. It was they were public. They were working for a a nonprofit. They took the case, amazingly, all the way up to the United States Supreme Court. And what they said was, you are denying people with the benefit that don't have money. This is not criminal now. Remember, we talked about this involves anything that's not criminal. You're not allowing people to know what their rights are. And they said, well, what do you mean people aren't knowing what their rights are? They said, if you don't allow advertising, people that don't have the wherewithal to know that they can get legal services, and in the case of people that were injured in accidents, they could get legal services without having to have any money, okay? And the Supreme Court said, that's right. If you take people that live in rural areas, they don't know lawyers.
I feel like it would almost be intimidating for certain.
That's a perfect word, Chad, is intimidating. It was more than intimidating. We all think, who are educated, and when I say educated, I just mean trained. High school graduates. You don't have to be a college graduate. I mean, everybody doesn't go to high school. Everybody doesn't get a graduate. Everybody doesn't have that to do those types of things. How would they have access? Well, people say, well, you call up. No, you don't call up a lawyer. If you don't know any lawyer, you're intimidated.
I would just assume that it would automatically come with a fee. You know what I mean? Like for me to talk to you, is it going to be all this money that I already don't have?
And guess what? Remember, there's never a fee unless we get money for you. No, but that's how it all. So your innocent expression to me is exactly what the United States Supreme Court said. All people should be able to know that if there are lawyers who do things that where they can get certain it's not even not paying for it. What if I need a lawyer for bankruptcy and I'm not educated? How do I know where to go? What to do? Do lawyers charge me for sitting in their office? Can I get a free consultation from somebody? None of that was known, and they said that's really depriving a large segment of our population for the right to have legal services. And that's the way. They didn't come down and say, well, advertising should be free, should be there for everybody. No. It was decided for a specific reason, but that opened the doors.
Because no one was doing it.
No one was allowed, or you would be disbarred as a lawyer. You wouldn't be able to practice law. You would be thrown out of the
there's all these people that have no idea that this is a possibility. So what really happened was they went without lawyers. Yeah.
Or they didn't get work done, or they didn't have.
Or like you said earlier, screwed, kind of.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, they were screwed. And so what happens is, in the beginning, lawyers now say, okay, we can now advertise and tell people. And advertise for me did not mean television. It needed print. In 1982, when I started to advertise, we put ads in the newspaper. Actually, we did it in Pittsburgh. We did a test case. When I say we, my ex-wife, Sandy, she was the marketing guru. She was not a lawyer. She was an advertising person, had a degree, I think a master's in business. And she said to me at that time, she had been doing professional advertising for some dentists, for some different people, and said to me, well, now lawyers are allowed to do this, and we see what's going. We weren't the first, because it was in 1979. By the time we got to it, it was already been a couple of years, but really wasn't a lot of advertising. And there was, she said, the drunk driving laws in Pennsylvania changed in 82, 83.
Is it true that they before weren't even a misdemeanor before?
You got it. It was a summary offense handled in a magistrate's office. And unless you seriously injured or killed somebody, you could just have it all, pay a fine. Your wrists were slapped. So at that time, I had started a law firm, Edgar Snyder and Associates. I was the Edgar Snyder and I was the associate. It was me. Okay. And I hired one lawyer, Cindy, out of law school, and turned out she stayed with me forever, became a partner, and went on to all kind of great things. But at that time, started law firm and put an ad in the Pittsburgh Press, which was a newspaper in town. Okay, it wasn't always the Post-Gazette; it was both newspapers. And we put an ad in, and it was what we call tombstone, like a little 2 inches by 4 inches.
Yeah, just a little block.
Know your rights if you're picked up for DUI. And why did that make an impression? Because up until that time, nobody needed a lawyer to do it.
Yeah, if it was a slap on the wrist,
but
there's
now
no reason.
you could go to jail, and all of a sudden, people that had never had to worry about it, all of a sudden, people were now getting arrested for drunken driving. People, when I say white collar, people that had professional people, all kinds of people, they didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
How are we going to handle this? My God, I could go to jail. Well, I guess you better hire a lawyer. We put an ad in 2x4, said, know your rights. If you're picked up for DUI, call Edgar Snyder.
That's the first ad that you put?
First ad.
Wow. Was there a lot of drunk driving in here? Or in Pittsburgh?
There was always drunk driving. We just didn't have a problem.
I mean, was that like the
Truthfully, I drove drunk. And I didn't stop drinking. I didn't stop drinking in excess more than you were. I didn't stop until the law changed, and I said, I'm afraid myself. Up until that time, I mean, people just drove, and you drank and you drove. I mean,
it's like what you see on a movie, people riding around with a case of beer, all that.
Didn't matter.
Yeah, that's so interesting to think about that now, because obviously now it's something that, you could get, it's grounds for termination at some places.
Grounds for going to jail.
Yeah.
But at the time, up until the law changed. So we picked the right time to test advertising. From this little ad, 1 year later, I had the busiest practice in the city of Pittsburgh.
No way.
Driving. And I learned I went to a seminar in Cleveland, Ohio, that how did you try a drunk driving case? You learned how to attack the breathalyzer, because the only way they could find you at that time was if you took a breathalyzer test. And we learned how to show all the things that were going wrong with breathalyzer tests, how they weren't reliable. So people would hire me and anybody else who was doing this, but we became the experts by putting this ad. We said, wow, this is unbelievable how powerful this advertising is. And then we said, well, let's try it with personal injury. There's a lot of people injured in accidents, and if you get a case, the fees are better than they are in drunk driving cases.
Yeah. Let me ask you something real quick though about this first part. So whenever you do this first ad and you say that your business grew exponentially in the first year, did it ever get to a point where you were nervous about the growth and the scaling of it?
No, not yet, because
you and Cindy can handle it.
We could handle it. It was drunk driving cases, and it was. If I say I had the largest practice, if I had 25 cases, and that might have been it wasn't anything
that was unmanageable.
It wasn't like it was going to become later.
Yeah.
Okay. But then we decided, okay, let's start advertising for people that are in auto accidents.
Yeah.
And we put ads in. We started in not just the Pittsburgh paper, but we advertised in Westmoreland County, Washington County. We put some ads in about 5 or 6 papers. Started to get a lot of calls. So ultimately, we put ads in about 25 papers in Western Pennsylvania, okay? Places that I never been, like Canonsburg. But it was, we saw, oh my God, business is just really coming in the door, and I started to hire lawyers at that particular time to help me. And by that time already, I was going to a seminar in Boston from a friend who later became a good friend. But at the time, it was called Trial Lawyers Marketing. And it was go and learn how to market. And when I went to learn how to be a better marketeer, okay, everything was about television. They said, television is king. You're doing stuff in newspapers, that's small potatoes. Television's where it's at. And back in the middle 80s, there were only 3 TV stations, ABC, CBS, NBC. No cable, nothing. Okay, so you didn't have to figure out no streaming, nothing that we know today.
Yeah.
It was just television, 3 stations. So we said, okay, where do we want to do? How do you want to do this? It's expensive. And we said, well, let's open up an office in Johnstown, Pennsylvania. I've never been there, but let's open up an office in Johnstown, Pennsylvania. Well, why do you want to go to Johnstown? Well,
a little less money?
A lot less money. A lot less. And there was no lawyers advertising.
Okay.
In the Cambria County, there was no lawyers advertising. So we said, okay, we'll go up and get a storefront. We rented an office, and I went and filmed my first TV commercial in the beginning of the year of 1986.
1986 was the first commercial.
First commercial TV.
Yeah.
I'd already been handling cases from ads since 82, but not on television.
Now, let me ask you this. As you're doing this marketing in paper, the cost to do marketing and to advertise, it was low cost?
Yeah, low.
Okay.
Ads weren't expensive. We weren't doing big ads.
Yeah.
I mean, it was very inexpensive.
Okay.
I mean, and the payback was 50 to 1.
Okay, so that makes sense.
And if I spent $500 for an ad and I made $5,000 on a campaign,
juice was worth the squeeze.
Oh yeah. That was absolutely nothing.
Now TV though,
so when we get to 1986 and we go to Johnstown and we open up an office and all right, I'd never been to Johnstown. Who opens up an office? It's hard enough to get business. How do you? But this is now a new era. This is called television. Nobody's advertising in Cambria County. And I put an ad on, and when I look at the ad now, because I still have to look at it, 5,000 ads later, but I talked about, if you're in an accident and my arms were going like this, and it was my ad where I looked like a bird. I was flying. Okay, that's how bad it was. It was of such low quality that I looked at it and I said, oh my God, I'm a buffoon. Who would hire somebody that even look like this? The phones rang off the hook almost from the day one.
Wow.
And the big question was, oh my God, I got to go back to Johnstown now to see these people. I don't want to drive up there.
Yeah.
But I had to. We were getting so much business that's where it kicked in. That's where I became entrepreneurial. And entrepreneurial meaning, okay, well, this is a business. So I went to Blair County in Altoona. They had a TV station, and I opened up an office in Altoona. And then I opened up an office in Erie, because all these places had I don't think there was anybody advertising. There were a few ads in Pittsburgh, and there were some national ads, okay, coming in at that time from lawyers that advertised and bought some time, but they were not from Pittsburgh. And we opened up these offices. And so between 1986 and in the end of 87, we were now in Erie, Johnstown, Altoona. But we weren't, my base was Pittsburgh. That's where I was operating. But we didn't have what we felt at that time was the money. And we said, okay, you can't be advertising and not be in Pittsburgh. And we had to take a leap of faith. Go in and borrow money. Advertising was expensive here. And, we did that. We took a deep breath. My ex-wife and I took a deep breath, and we went in and borrowed a lot of money and signed a note for our house was at stake.
Yeah.
I didn't know. I was starting to do well. But I didn't have enough collateral. They weren't impressed with my TV. It was kind of like I was an outlier. I mean,
Yeah.
They weren't impressed. Today I could go in and borrow money because
I'm sure.
But everybody advertising's common. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying who I am. I'm just saying today that people understand.
Yeah, but back then, whenever you're doing this, it's kind of a
they understand how it works. But we did that, and that changed my life. And from there on, life became different because we were getting more work in a week than a lawyer would get in a year.
Wow. And, how many people at this time did you have working for you?
about 6 or 7.
So you're getting all this work with 6 or 7 people?
No, up until that time.
Oh, yeah.
Once the explosion hit.
Oh, okay.
Okay, up until 86. And then over the years, we went from 6 or 7 to 15 to 20 to 30 to 50 to 80 to 100 to 120 to 140 people. And it became... I practiced law I practiced law until the early 90s, and then I made a decision. If I didn't stop being a lawyer and own a business and start to run a business, I was going to fail.
Yeah, the business would suffer for your time.
You needed somebody that devoted their time to running this business. What I didn't understand, and of course I understand today, is that a lot of businesses in America have failed because they're too busy and they can't handle it. Everybody thinks that the only businesses that fail are businesses that don't get enough business. No, there's books written about companies that they just couldn't handle it. And my overriding fear for all those years was, if I don't know how to handle this, I'm going to go bankrupt. And my nightmare that carried me through the early 90s was, I got to figure this thing out, and I got to really be able to do this and know how to handle a high volume of cases. Because if I don't do them right, I'll commit malpractice and I'll be out of business. People will sue me, and I will not be able to handle it. So my nightmare was, I won't be able to do this. I'll fail. I'll go bankrupt, and some other lawyer will come in and say, "Oh God, what a dumb person this Snyder was. He had all this business he couldn't figure out." We figured out how to do it. Hired people to help us. We picked a lot of brains of people who were smarter than I was and had more knowledge than I did of how to do these kind of things, how to work volume, how to do all that. But it was up until that time, and then life changed, and all the things of running a big business. I ended up hiring great lawyers who became great lawyers. They ultimately became partners. They ultimately bought the business later. But I trained them, mentored them. They became really good, and that's how the journey started at that time. But I paid the price, because for many, many years, I was a pariah professionally. I was on the outs. Lawyers thought that I was worse than a used car salesman.
Yeah.
What could be worse than a used car salesman? I love used cars.
Because your advertisements, you're saying?
Yeah, no, it's not professional.
Yeah.
You're schlock. I mean, it's not professional. Look what you're doing. Well, what you really were doing, which really aggravated the lawyers, especially out in Western Pennsylvania, when you got out of the city. I mean, all these counties, we were in 27 counties where they had no competition. They were little lawyers in their own towns. Nobody came in, and all of a sudden, there's an expression, Chad. I get mean when you mess with my green. That was the lawyer were getting mean when I messed with their green. It got so bad that I don't even know why I wanted to do it, but I tried to join the Bar Association in Cambria County, which is where Johnstown is, and they wouldn't let me join. They had to let me join. You're a lawyer. You're allowed to join a bar association. You pay your dues.
Yeah.
No, they wouldn't let me in. They said, no, we don't want to. We're afraid to death you'll come to our Christmas dance and ruin the party because you'll be there and everybody will hate you. I mean, it was like,
that's pretty wild to think about. Just because you capitalized on an opportunity to educate people on the opportunities, other people were almost upset with you for doing
only lawyers.
Yeah.
Never the public.
Yeah. I mean, I don't imagine the public could, because like I said, I'm 32. I never personally had to use a personal injury lawyer, but people my age and around my age, everyone knows who you are. I sat down with Sally Wiggin. It's the same thing with her. It's like, I told her, I'm a younger person that I didn't watch the news back then, and everyone knows who you are. And you did a great job at that, because, everyone remembers the advertisements that you put on TV. But I'm curious to rewind a little bit back to that.
Go back.
Now, whenever you said you borrowed all this money, and
I borrowed money to buy TV ads.
Yeah. But your mindset of that, like, did you say, I'm going to just start doing a bunch of different commercials, or did you just have one?
We did more and more commercials, and I did some commercials that today, when I look at them, I say, wow. I mean, I had a lot of courage at that time to do this, because my most famous commercial that we filmed and became, it really highlighted what I was doing was, we went to a junkyard and we filmed a commercial in a junkyard in Pittsburgh, and we hired a crane and we put a wrecked car up on a boom.
And it dropped on your desk.
And it dropped on my desk. And the desk was 15 feet away, but with the television, and what you can do is
the movie magic.
And I stood up and I said, if you're in an auto accident, bring your problems to us. And a car dropped down. And that's when the lawyers went absolutely nuts. They said, this guy should be disbarred for being unprofessional.
Wow.
I mean, they said, they wrote articles in the paper that said, you're a disgrace. I mean, you are an absolute disgrace. You're making a mockery out of the legal profession. And I always said lawyers were never on the highest totem pole of respectable people. I mean, they never have. I mean, they do great things, but in the public's eye, lawyers. And
I don't really see you as someone who gets offended easily.
I don't get offended easily, because if I got offended easily, I would have been out of that end of the business. I actually, I loved it, because for 5 years I had no competition.
So it took 5 years for anyone else to do any sort of TV advertisement?
To the extent that I was doing it.
Yeah,
I was mega. I was on every TV. I was on all TV stations in all the cities in Western Pennsylvania all day, every day.
Well, talk to me about this. Like, how do you develop that sort of plan? Because obviously it's going to be a good bit of money, but you were like, I mean, like, how do you approach these stations and say, I want to be on? Because I swear to God, every time I turned on my TV, you would see this TV spot.
If you've been hurt in an auto accident, you should call attorney Edgar Snyder.
I'm attorney Edgar Snyder. I'm attorney Edgar Snyder. I'm attorney Edgar Snyder. If you've been seriously injured in a car accident, if you're hurt in a motorcycle accident, if you've been attacked by a dog, that makes me mad.
If you do that again, I'm going to call my attorney.
Call my law firm. And remember, there's no fee unless we get money for you.
All the time.
I love it. It brought a chill. Yeah, that was the give credit again to Sandy, but it was we had the courage to withstand the pressure to do all of these things from the law profession. And what we always said was, the true indicator is, if the public doesn't like what you advertise, they won't buy it.
Yeah.
They were buying it big time. And therefore we said, let the lawyers cry, yell, scream, attack me. And they did. I was attacked publicly in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. I agreed to do a discussion on legal advertising.
Is this where I read that like 500 lawyers came?
500 lawyers. 500. It was a bar association. It was a bar association. It was a function for lawyers. I mean, they didn't just come out of the killer blue sky. No, it was a function for lawyers. And the highlight of it was Edgar Snyder was going to debate somebody as to whether or not it's professional to advertise.
Did you have any colleagues that were kind of all right and embraced, the way that you were going about things?
Yeah, I had family that were lawyers. They still talked.
Oh, okay. but you were on the outs of pretty much everyone else.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
And
yes.
was that like a polarizing thing, or you kind of embraced it and you leaned into it?
Loved it.
I love that.
Highlight of my life.
That's the best.
Was the best. It was the best because I was laughing my way to the bank.
Yeah. And for 5 years, that's
for 5
incredible.
years. In fact, I used to say, I know that the honeymoon will be over when the Bar Association eventually is going to ask me to do a seminar.
Oh, to teach other people how to do it.
Yes. And then I decided, well, I'm going to teach other people how to do it so it's done right.
Yeah.
But that was 5 years later. And when I got that call from the person who was the executive director at that time of the Bar Association, I said to myself, it's over. And it wasn't over, but
yeah,
the holiday
everyone
was over.
caught on.
Well, yeah, the holiday was over. But
how many TV spots did you do? Do you know offhand?
I've done thousands.
Okay, yeah.
Over my career, but at that time we were doing every 3 months we were doing another 20 commercials. So I was doing about
goodness,
I was doing about 80 a year, and new ones, and always new ones, and constantly new ones. Because
do you have a favorite one?
Yeah, the one where I dropped the car. It's my most favorite ad because we only had 3 desks. They were made of balsa wood.
Yeah,
and 2 of them. The commercials, we didn't get it right. I couldn't say that. I didn't time it right.
Yeah.
And we had 1 more desk left. And we had spent a lot of money to film this with a crane and all this stuff in a junkyard. And it cost me a lot of money. And as the director said to me, well, big shot, you got 1 more time or you're going to have blown a wad of money here today because you don't have any more desks. Got it right. That was always.
Did you work with the same director of these?
We had. For many years, we had the same director. He was just a young guy too, who wasn't. He had directed other TV things that didn't involve lawyers. But in the beginning, we used the same guy, and it was great. We did all this, and we watched not only the practice get bigger. But we did all this market research that said that we did, when George Bush, the father, was president of the United States, we did market research in Cambria County. We were better known than the president. We got 99 name recognition. When you ask people, because there's a lot of people that aren't that smart, who's the president of the United States? They couldn't answer it, but who's Edgar Snyder? He's the lawyer on television. So we knew that we were on the right track when more people knew who we were in Cambria County than the president of the United States. But and I'm telling you a true story. I'm not making it up. But it was that type of thing. It was we were marketeers.
Yeah.
Who had good lawyers. The challenge for us, Chad, was. Everybody wanted to get us out of business. And in every courthouse that we went to in Western Pennsylvania, if we didn't do a good job, I preached at that time. I said, if you are not better than the people that you're coming up against, if you're not at least as good, we're not going to make it. They'll home run us. They'll get it because we're not from that county. If you go out to Huntington County and their lawyers are there and you're not doing the job right, the judge is going to rule in favor. They're going to rule on all these motions and stuff against us.
You had to be undeniable.
We had to be legitimate. We had to be. We had to at least have the court say they're prepared, and whether you like them or not, they're lawyering in the right way. And people used to say, these guys, all they're doing is advertising on television, they're getting the cases, and they're settling real cheap. That's all. You don't want to use people that are settling them cheap. And I used to say, well, I guess we had, at that time, at one time, we had 425 cases filed in Western Pennsylvania. And I remember saying to whatever body I was talking to, people, well, I guess we must be lawyers who litigate too, because I can show you 425 lawsuits. I said, do you think there's any lawyer in Western Pennsylvania that's got 425 lawsuits filed in Western Pennsylvania? So we are legitimate. I mean, you're just jealous.
Yeah, and that's really what it ends up being.
It was all jealousy.
That's pretty incredible.
It was all jealousy, and I understood it. I mean, I never looked upon myself as. I believed that what we were doing was really a service.
Yeah.
Okay. It was a service for people. It wasn't a public service because we got paid, but we were doing a service for people. We came up with all of these free things. What attracts people to call you at that time?
There's no fee.
More than that, we used 800 numbers when they weren't popular.
So people didn't have to pay for the call.
People would never call a lawyer and pay $1.
Wow.
I mean, today it's like, well, you don't have to pay.
Yeah, you don't even think about it.
You have a plan. I mean, you can call anywhere in the United States. It doesn't, but back then, we always stressed free, free, free. We'll come to you, to your house. You don't have to come to us. Free.
Wait. You traveled to people's homes?
I bought a van and put an office in it. And they called it Law Van. In the late 80s, early 90s. We traveled. We said to people on television, you don't have to come to us. We'll come to you. And until I stopped practicing law, I spent my days traveling with a driver in a van, and we used to go to people's houses, and they'd say, "Yeah, come on." I said, "No, come on out. Come on into my office." And they were going, "You have an office?" And we did. We had a van.
Wow.
And we put an office at a round circular desk. And we found out that it was the best thing we ever did, but not because people wanted to come to our office. They said, if we win the case, we have enough money to buy a van like this. I mean, that was unintended circumstances. But that's truly, people say, "Oh, you must have been a genius." No. We tried so many different things, and what worked.
Yeah.
I mean, I could show you a list at that time, if I had it, of all the things that didn't work that we thought were great ideas.
Yeah, you just weren't afraid to really go out on a limb and try to figure out a different approach and everything.
Because I was a marketeer practicing law. Lawyers who worked for me were lawyers practicing law. I was a marketeer. My brain and the brain of my ex-wife.
Yeah.
Had to be, we spent our time, and we also, we met and started a group that did this with lawyers all over the country.
Taught them how to do this?
No. They were all doing the same thing. We all learned together.
Oh, okay.
We started, it would be like a trade organization. It was lawyers that weren't competitive. They might have been from California. They were from New Orleans. They were from Detroit, from Kansas City, all over. We got lawyers together, and we met twice a year and talked about creative ideas that everybody was doing. So if I listened to somebody else and said, "I tried this and it really worked," we learned how to do this. So we weren't afraid to do all these marketing ideas.
Yeah.
And that was really the key at that time. As I said, I was the only lawyer. They asked me, would I come on to help regulate legal advertising? Because there was no regulation for it. In the beginning, we weren't allowed to do it. And in the 90s, I served on a board where I was the only advertising lawyer in Pennsylvania that was asked to do it, to help regulate it, because you just can't run wild and say, you can't say things that aren't true.
Yeah.
You can't say things that are both. I mean, we set parameters at that time, because I said, I'd rather be on the person who set the parameters than the person who had nothing to say about it and then had to figure out what to do because I was doing it wrong. It was ethics. There are ethics today. I mean, there's rules written for how you can advertise, way you can say things, what you can do, and all those things had to be done back in the 90s, and it was a very important thing. So
someone had to establish that process the right way. Yes. Now, let me ask you this: as you mentioned numerous times, I was a marketeer practicing law. Yeah. Now, at any point, do you think that your marketeering aspect of the job did it overshadow the law practicing?
No, because I stopped practicing law, and I insisted that my lawyers were the best. It didn't overshadow it. My emphasis was on the marketing. Not marketing, it was how to run a volume business of a lawyer.
So you knew when to focus, when to step away from one end of it all to focus on the other. I
still understood all the issues, but I didn't handle clients' cases and I wasn't involved in anything that had to do with trying the cases, doing the law. I was involved with how do you run a business like this with 100 people or whatever it was, and how do you market a business that had never been marketed before. We were pioneers.
Yeah.
Okay, it's great to be a pioneer, but you have to figure out what to do and do it right. So I never had an issue of that. I focused on the business.
Did you ever miss the law end of it all?
Yes. I love to try cases. I love to go before a jury. I was very, very good. I'm incredibly humble. No, I was good.
No, I understand.
I was good, but
was it something about the marketing that you enjoyed a little bit more?
How many people get a chance to have two separate careers? Trial lawyer, all that excitement, all that stuff, and then running a big business.
Yeah.
And also still understanding the law. I still had to know what I was doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I didn't have to try the cases. I missed the practice of law in terms of trial work, but I was so exhilarated by running a business. I never fashioned myself. I never thought I would become a business person. I never thought I would be a CEO of a company. That was, I didn't see that. And when it happened, I'd already practiced law for about 17 or 18 years. And this was, most people don't have the opportunity in business to be a pioneer. Pioneer, people who are new, practice laws forever, right? But advertising was new. I was a pioneer along with people all over the country that were doing the same thing.
Yeah.
I'm not unique. That was exhilarating to me. I mean, that carried the day.
Oh, I bet it would be.
I still get excited about it. I still try to supply for my law firm ideas and things to do to better market, better things like that. I think that that's one of the values I probably still have is that's the way my brain works.
Huh. That's very, very interesting. Very interesting for sure. Now, you said you stopped practicing law, and am I correct that you sold the business, right?
Yeah, and I had partners who had been with me for years and years and years. I decided about 7 or 8 years before I actually, when I say retired, I'm not retired because I still get paid for doing commercials I still get paid for the work that I do for the law firm.
Yeah.
I retired from owning the law firm and running the law firm.
And running the whole thing.
Okay. I am not involved in the business of running the law firm. I am, because it's my name, they are kind enough to ask me my opinion on a lot of different things from my experience.
Yeah.
So I'm still involved. I still meet. I still do things, but I'm not actively involved. So I say to people, I'm really not semi-retired. What I actually am is I am involved with how the business still works, but I don't run it, and it's not my job. That ended at the end of 2013 when I sold the business, and over a period of years, they paid off to me. But I'm still there. I'm still around, and I'm still going in.
A consultant, so to speak.
I'm a consultant, but I'm still working because I'm still doing commercial. I'm still there, playing a role, but not the role that I played in starting the company. But people said, "Well, was it easy?" I prepared myself for it. This was my plan. I didn't want to run this business and do this forever. I really didn't. It was a great 30-year run at that aspect of the business, and that followed my career as a criminal lawyer, and it allows me to do the things with my wife and my older children and my grandchildren today that I'm able to do. But I decided that you have to have an exit strategy. You have to get out. I just didn't want to do this forever. And by the time I was 72, by the time...
Can I ask how old you are now?
I'm 81.
Don't look like it at all.
Thank you.
If you and I know that this is a side. I do my research. I just type in random stuff. You know, I looked up your name on Twitter and everything like that, and there is more tweets about people that say you look exactly the same as you did when we saw you. Whenever you filmed this spot, this is, and I put this on here
before you do that.
Yeah.
Okay. I looked old 40 years ago. I had no hair. I had a beard. I still don't have any hair. And what happens is if you look old when you're young, you look young when you're old. So it's
That's
not
fair. You know, 6 does one, half does
Go
the
ahead.
other.
I know you were going to play.
But this was this is the commercial that I feel resonated with me. Like I said, I'm 32. This is the one that I remember most.
Go ahead.
I really love dogs, but not when they injure someone. I'm attorney Edgar Snyder. If your child or someone you know has been injured by a dog, call my law firm first for a free telephone consultation. And as always, there's no fee unless we get money for you.
Now, I feel like I remember that playing
Everybody does.
all the time.
Everybody does. And the reason that they do, I'll take credit for figuring out how to take a subject that is really disturbing to people and not show a vicious dog attacking somebody, which would offend. And at that time, I now know because I have, between my wife and I, we have 5 children and 7 dogs. I know what people love in their dogs. I mean, they should only love their children as much as they love their dogs.
Yeah.
But if you offend a dog owner, you're not only, will they never hire you, they'll say you're the worst person.
You sour the taste.
So this cartoon, this animation, took all the sting out of the subject. All we were saying to people is, I like dogs too, but if they bite somebody, you should have the right to understand you can recover for bad injuries that people get from dogs. It didn't come across as we saw other people do ads on television later where they had growling dogs and everything. Just aggravated people. People hated it that had dogs. People hated it that didn't have dogs. It scared the hell out of them.
Yeah.
And it was that type of situation. We took it out. If I had my way, I'd run it doesn't matter that the production value today would not be considered. It's by far one of the most popular. I can't think of anything. You played it, and I can't think of anything that more people remember than that ad.
Yeah.
And it's memorable because, of the way we did it.
Speaking on being memorable, though, like what is life, for you like as being someone who is this figure in the city? I mean, obviously, like we said, of all ages, people that are your age, people that are my age, you're known by all. Was that ever something that was like overwhelming, kind of growing up?
I made my decision. I can't walk down the streets now, and I couldn't walk down the streets 20 years ago, 10 years ago.
You still get people coming up to you all the time?
Every day. And we used to walk down the streets when I was practicing law downtown and when I was around, and people just stop their cars and they point their finger. That's all. Okay. Look, I'll give you, this is just amazing. I was on an airplane 2 weeks ago coming back to Pittsburgh. From Pittsburgh, I was coming from Pittsburgh back down to Florida. And there was a guy on the airplane, big guy, about 5'11", he weighed about 260. Beard longer than yours, and that's long.
Yeah.
Not on television, but trust me, folks, it's just, he's got a good beard. This guy says, getting on the plane, I can't believe it. It's Edgar Snyder sitting here. And he was loud. And I was kind of a little bit embarrassed. And how you doing, buddy? And I gave him a high five and everything. He said, love your ads, love your ads. Sat in the back of the plane. I went to the men's room in the airplane to 35,000 feet. I come back, and the guy's sitting in the back of the plane, and he stands up, and he yells, can you believe it? Edgar Snyder's on this plane. I tried to jump out, but
had trouble doing it.
I couldn't get the door open, okay? I was like, sweat was coming all over me. I was like, what do I do here? Oh, my God, this is like, I'm mortified.
Yeah.
People started pointing their fingers in the airplane. Everybody started doing this. So a guy has the flight attendant, comes up to me. I'm sitting there, says, will you do me a favor? Bill, which is what his name was, my new best friend. Bill, will you take a picture with him? I said, not in the airplane.
Yeah.
He said, no, he wants to see you. Will you wait for him in the terminal? Yeah, sure. I would. I waited for him in the terminal, came out. Edgar Snyder, I can't believe I'm going to get a picture with you. But I mean, afterwards, so many people were on the airplane, they lined up also for pictures, okay? Meaning that was 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
The
Same as it was 30 years ago.
Maybe more, maybe.
Yeah.
All right. I've never had a problem with it. If you can't stand the heat, get out of the kitchen.
Yeah.
I don't understand celebrities, really famous celebrities. I mean, movie stars, all these people. I don't understand where they're not nice, or people that are athletes that don't want to sign off. I mean, if you don't want to have this publicity, you're not required. Just don't do it. Don't get out of it. But a lot of people want their cake and eat it too. They don't want the fame. They don't want the intrusion on their private life. But they want the money that they make from it, or whatever it is that's motivating them.
Absolutely.
I have always believed.
You know what you're getting yourself into.
Excuse me. I have never. I don't remember any negative situations involving me and my advertising in 40 years. I don't remember. If there is any, I don't remember them. And I just, I'm stopped. Do I enjoy it? It's not a novelty anymore after thousands and thousands of people. But I like the fact that it brings a smile to people's faces. This is not something that is in any way negative. And
it's a beautiful thing. I mean,
Look, I don't know if you did any reading beforehand, but the Pittsburgh City paper back in 2016 did a contest on who is the most famous. What's the most iconic, famous thing in Pittsburgh? It wasn't just me and people. It was like bridges, different things, Clementi. It was all kinds of things. In the final, I beat Fred Rogers.
That's an testament.
I mean, that's God.
Yeah.
I mean, I said I didn't want to win. People are going to hate me.
Yeah.
I'm going to get hate mail. All right. It was like, well, he was passed away, so there's a lot of people didn't know who he was already. He'd been gone for 10 or 15 years. Edgar still was around doing his commercials.
Whenever I was researching, there were so many people that were saying, "Oh, I'm pissed that they named it Acrisure. It should have been Edgar Snyder Stadium."
And we tried, but I mean, we just didn't happen to have the $35 million sitting around to
absolutely
to
insane.
But it's just, it's been a fun, interesting part of my life. I accept it. I don't have any problem with it. There have been maybe a few times where I would have liked to have finished my dinner without giving legal advice. Can I just ask? Can I just? I'm sorry to interrupt you. Can I just ask you a question?
Yeah.
And if it was really a complicated question, I give him my card and say, "Look, do me a favor. Call me personally. Here's my personal number. Call me tomorrow. But the steak is so good, it's lousy, but it's cold."
That's fair.
Look,
you know what comes with it.
I'm privileged.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, let me ask you this. Aside from all the business aspects of it all,
right.
Like, what do you do for yourself? Like, what do you enjoy doing? Like,
I've been involved for the last 35 years in a lot of philanthropy.
Okay.
My belief has always been my belief that if you are successful, you have a responsibility to give back to your community. And being a lawyer and handling cases and making fees is not giving back to your community. Charitable work. And my law firm, I couldn't begin to tell you how many different charities that we devote time for, money for, publicize, believe in it. Okay, it's part of my fabric of who I am, and I've spent a lot of time not just giving money to charities, but doing work for charitable. I mean,
I see you do all kinds of stuff.
I do, and I do it because that's what it's all about. I mean, you give back, and if you're fortunate in life to have these opportunities, I mean, and what I'm really the most proud of is that the law firm continues today to do this. I mean, we do a lot of stuff with athletes and stuff. That's all charitable, whether it's with Cam Hayward, whether it's with Chris Letang. It's just, it's been an incredible ride. I mean, you know, the philanthropy part of it, I still continue to do it. I still I like to see the good that we can do, and we've used we haven't used the athletes. The athletes have used us because we're very well known, and we can provide television time for them. I mean, a lot of these athletes who have charitable foundations, they do, aside from, you know, people like Cam Hayward, I mean, the Hayward House and different charity. I mean, they really devote a lot of time to charities. They fund them, and we're happy to partner. That's those kind of things. We came up with those ideas. I mean, that was not something that was done before we got involved. Now I see other people do other things, but very little. We always, and whether it's drunk driving, I've been crusading for safety and drunk driving stuff since we started doing it back in the early 80s. I mean, since the law changed. That's giving back. I mean, you know, I don't have a conflict at that time in representing people, but saying do everything we can to stop it. I don't want to be a victim. Of
Absolutely.
So, you know, it's that type of situation where we, you know,
do what you can.
We do what we can, and you know, it's. I just think it's a blessing every day to have the opportunity to do this and to be able to sit here and say to you, well, this is my going to be my 57th year. I mean, how lucky is that?
That's incredible.
How many people have a career where they're able to say, yeah, I'm still involved in things, not full time, not, you know, plenty of time for leisure. I travel a lot. I mean, it's all good. Yeah,
but I mean, for being as active as you are, you're 81 years old. I mean, you can't help but just enjoy the ride, like you said. It's incredible.
I'm enjoying the ride, and I've seen at this stage in my life how quickly it can be over.
Yeah,
and therefore try to enjoy each day for the things that are good.
Absolutely,
and that's what we try to do.
Now, let me, you know, I've held you up here long enough. Now, let me move to the ending segment that I do with everyone, and we'll get you out of here. So, I learned about your life. I learned about how you got to where you are today. I do an ending segment with all my guests. It's called Desert Island Questions.
Okay.
So, Desert Island Questions is whenever I give each guest 3 categories to take things with them on a desert island. So the first category is 3 movies. So ideally, I'd love you to pick your 3 favorite movies of all time that if you were stuck on an island like Tom Hanks and Castaway, you could watch over and over and over again.
The Gangsters. I'm just trying to, only because you asked me. I mean, I've watched them many, many times. I'm just trying to think of it had 3 movies. There were 3.
Godfather.
All 3. I love The Godfather. You know, Shawshank Redemption. Those kind of movies that are classic movies. I could watch them all the time. And The Godfather sticks out in my mind. If you want to pick out movies, I just. Those type of movies. If I would sit down and give it more than a second of thought, the first thing that came to my mind is you know, I love those. I love those movies.
That's a great answer. Those are good. Okay, second category is I usually ask people 3 books that they would take on them, but I would like to ask you. You said you travel. What are 3 of your favorite places you've ever been?
I just came from a trip to Antarctica.
Really?
Yes, and Antarctica. I'd never. I'm proud to say I've been on all 7 continents now, because Antarctica is uninhabited. So the only way you can get there, we actually took a plane, but you're on a ship. And I was there in January. that was memorable doing that, seeing all the penguins, the whales, and everything.
Wow.
But, 7,000-foot glaciers, big icebergs. That was one of my favorite. Trip to Africa.
Yeah.
I mean, safari, just absolutely an amazing experience. And if I had to pick a third place that really was amazing, I spent time in New Zealand. And those are just spectacular, interesting, exciting places to go, and having the opportunity to do those kind of things. I've been lucky, and I've healthy enough to be able to travel the world.
It's incredible. Absolutely. Okay, third category is 3 of your favorite artists, musical artists. If you had to choose, who do you like to listen to?
I'm stuck in the 70s.
That's all right.
And I love the Beatles.
Mm-hmm.
I like Carole King.
Yeah.
And if I had to pick, let's see, somebody else that would stick in my mind, I want to stick with those. Those are the ones that come up to me. But I'm constantly listening to I listen to all of the stuff that has to do with the 70s.
Yeah.
I'm still stuck in it. It's always amazing to me how my kids and my grandchildren, they still listen. They listen to that music too. They know the same. I love Simon and Garfunkel. Simon and Garfunkel.
Yeah, you usually a kid usually stays with what their parents put them in. My dad raised me on the Doors, Led Zeppelin, all that.
I love all that. I mean, but the first one that comes to mind always for me is just. I could listen to Yesterday all day. There's just things that speak to me in terms of music, and that's really where it's at for me.
Music, great thing, takes you back in time, everything. Okay, so I got a couple more questions. I'll get you out of here. Best concert you've ever been to?
I was at Elton John.
Oh yeah,
did a concert here a few years ago in Pittsburgh.
Yeah. Was it his last one?
Well, he started the last one about 20 years ago.
Yeah, I know, he keeps doing it.
And I don't think the last one's over yet, but I think the last one was his final tour, but not the one that was here. It was the first one before COVID.
Oh, okay.
COVID happened, and that was spectacular.
I bet.
Yeah, I loved that. I saw the Beatles when they first came in 1964 in Atlantic City. And I didn't hear a word because nobody heard a word. All you had was screaming. But that was probably as exciting a thing as
I bet
I could have ever had at that time. I thought that was just tremendous. Okay,
yeah, that's incredible.
But I'm a big Elton. I'm a big Elton John. I love the one I didn't mention. I'm a really big James Taylor fan. I love James Taylor. Probably James Taylor and the Beatles and
you like James Taylor's movies?
I don't know if I've seen the movies. I actually, I think most people today. If you said to me, "What's the best movie I've seen?" I haven't seen a movie. I haven't been to a movie house in 3 years because I watch all the streaming stuff on.
Oh yeah,
whether it's Netflix or.
Are you someone that keeps up on current TV shows and everything?
No, I don't watch any television. I hate television. I'm joking. Commercials get me. I can't stand them.
That would be ironic. I can't watch TV anymore.
Well, I do mute them unless they're mine. But in all seriousness. I just whatever the latest series is that people tell me it is good on streaming.
Yeah,
that's kind of what I watch. I'd rather watch that.
Now, I told a couple people that I let them in. Not a lot of people know that you're here, but told a couple people, and they were like, "You gotta." I said, "Do you have any questions that you'd be curious about?" And people were like, "You gotta ask him. Does he watch Better Call Saul or shows like that?"
First of all, Better Call Saul was fine, but Breaking Bad is
amazing.
The best TV series of all time. If you ask me what my favorite is, And he's my favorite actor. I mean, what's his name? Who plays the lead? He's
Bryan Cranston.
Bryan Cranston's just amazing. He's amazing in everything. He's amazing now. He just did the
Your Honor.
Your Honor. Yeah,
I'm currently on that.
I'm on that too. Don't tell me what happens.
I'm not telling you.
I'm in second year.
I am on the second season, and it's getting crazy. I'm going to actually try to finish it this weekend. But okay, now the third to last question is something called the death row meal. So you get a last meal. Let's say you were to get sentenced.
It's so easy.
What is it? Steak and a potato.
No.
Okay.
Nope. Go to Five Guys.
Really, a Five Guys burger?
Five Guys burger, and I love their French fries. I mean, I have
fries,
such high end taste. It's amazing. I mean, I'm so hard to please. There's, if the restaurant, Five Guys, and the wonderful thing about Five Guys, and I'm not being paid by Five Guys, but they have them all over the country. So, so you're never without your favorite place to go. But if I was on an island and I had to be, I love burgers. I mean, I can't.
Absolutely,
they speak to my stomach.
That's usually what my choice is. But you're going to be episode 239 of this podcast, and you couldn't even imagine the choices that people have. Okay, second to last question. This is probably the most telling thing that I'm going to ask you. If you're getting ready to go on a road trip, and you go into a gas station, what is the snack that you pick? Your favorite snack?
I love Cape Cod chips.
Really? They're fantastic.
They're not good for you.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
Not good for you at all.
If you eat a whole bag on a trip, you have to see a cardiologist at the end because they have to go in and do a stent to get there. But no. If I allow myself to do that, my wife brings fruit. I mean, you know how great fruit is on a trip. Till you get to the gas station, so you can sneak whatever it is before you get back in the car.
Okay, and then the last question: if you could have a conversation with anyone alive or dead, who would it be and why?
That's a great question. If I could have a conversation with anybody alive or dead, who would I have a conversation with? Just off the top of my head. When I was younger than you, I grew up in the era of John Fitzgerald Kennedy, and JFK was my idol as when he was the president. Going back into before he was assassinated in '63. I would love to sit down, knowing what I know now, and be able to. Ask a lot of questions. That's
a great answer.
I mean,
fascinating to hear what people would say.
I mean, especially because I hadn't. I never listened. I never listened through. I was tempted to go and listen to some of because I was sent some of your podcasts, and I said, well, I think it's spontaneity, and if I listened to this, then I would have had all my good answers. But
that's exactly why I didn't tell Josh.
I didn't. I mean, he put in some things from Sally Wiggin and stuff, but I said, I really don't want to I don't want to listen to these things because
you want the full experience.
I want the experience for myself, and I mean, there's only so many questions anybody that's doing podcasts and interviewing people. There's you can get into the person's life, but there are general questions. And I said, I'm going to let it roll. Now I've done other podcasts, so, but that's
a great answer. Mr. Snyder, absolutely honored to have you in. I appreciate you for taking some time out to speak with me today. As someone as, iconic as yourself, it really is truly an honor to have you in and be able to sit down and talk to you.
Yeah, thanks, Chad. I mean, I actually... I look forward to these opportunities. It gives me a chance to reminisce in my own mind, and it's kind of fun to take yourself back. You ask good questions. You're a very good interviewer, and but what were you thinking and what were you doing at a certain time? It makes you go back, and it's kind of fun. You get an opportunity to relive the way you felt about something that may have been quite a long time ago. So I enjoyed the opportunity, and I thank you for taking your time I'm flattered to be interviewed.
Absolutely. This is where I usually tell people to take a second and promote anything you'd like to promote. So if there's anything you'd like to promote, you could drop it here.
I've been a tort lawyer. I've been a trial lawyer. I've been done all this stuff. What I'd like to promote, it's a great question, and certainly I haven't given it any thought. I am very fearful of the way people drive all over the country right now. There's something since COVID, people just drive so fast. I see people weaving in and out of highways now at 80, 90, 100 miles an hour. And I'm so afraid that they're going to hit somebody, me, my family, loved ones, or anything. I just wish that people could take out their aggressions in some other fashion other than I've never seen anything going on quite like it is now. I've never seen people so angry if you happen to pull out in front of them accidentally. I mean, blasting their horn. I mean, I'm praying that somebody won't pull out a gun and shoot me or something. But But I think that if I had a soapbox right now, I would just say, can't we all bring down the level of anxiety? Because why do people want to do that? I mean, they're just risking their life, everybody else's. So that's what I would think off the top of my head.
Love it. Thank you again very much. Everyone else that's listening, appreciate you as usual. Each and every week, we're back with another great person throughout the city doing great things. Thank you for listening. Call you right back.